understand what is the ultimate strategy being offered by Krishna for controlling one's senses. But why is controlling the senses so important? We have been discussing in the previous few verses where Krishna is telling the answers to Arjun's questions, because Arjun had asked Krishna about that one perfected yogi, that one perfected person who is called Apragya Pratishtita, which means the person with perfected intelligence. So in the verses that we have been discussing right now, we are on the third answer. Kim Asit, how does such a person sit or control his senses? In the previous verse, Arjun was asking, and Krishna was telling Arjun that the senses are very, very impetuous, very, very strong, just like wild horses, and very, very difficult to control the senses. Now, all of us have had this experience. Many times, we have tried to control ourselves from eating too many sweets. Maybe some of us are diabetic and have been advised by the doctor not to eat sweets, or such other things, particularly these days, keeping away from the mobile phones. We are all addicted to the habit of constantly looking at our smartphones, looking at YouTube, the social media like Facebook, Instagram, and we all know just how difficult it is to hold back even for a single day from our phones. So that gives us an idea about how difficult it can be to control the senses. But in this particular verse, till now, Krishna has been actually telling Arjun to control senses, right? But in this verse, Krishna himself is offering the perfect solution, to Arjun. What is this perfect solution? We'll see that after the prayers. Om Agyanatimirandhasya Gyananjan Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. The magic of the magic mantra, you can feel it the day you adopt it in your lives. Well, the shloka for today is 2.61 and it goes like this. Tani sarvani sanyamya yukta asita matparaha vashehi yasyendriyani tasya pragya pratishtita. Matparaha, that is the magic phrase that Krishna utters for the first time in Bhagavad Gita till now. Till now, Krishna has been talking to Arjun, giving him all sorts of knowledge, refuting his objections about not fighting, telling him that his plan to go to the forest is actually a big, bogus. It's a bogus plan, So Arjun has been hearing Krishna out, but this is for the first time Krishna brings himself into the picture. And how is that? By saying Matpara. This is the first hint to Bhakti Yoga that Krishna gives. And with this is related the ultimate solution, the ultimate strategy to control our senses. You see, just stopping our senses from working is not really a long-term solution. For instance, if we have a naughty child around us, can we just tell the child to sit idle and just do nothing? We keep telling him, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. But can the child sit idle? We know that engaging the child in something positive is so important to keep the child out of trouble from indulging into negative engagements. So here Krishna is telling us about the positive, the ultimate positive engagement we can offer to our senses, which are not just like little naughty children, but also like strong, impetuous, wild horses. But this positive engagement, is what is going to keep the senses out of negative engagement. Now, this is the conclusion of the Vedic scriptures. This is the conclusion of the greatest acharyas in our parampara. We will see how. Let's first read the translation and some parts of the purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who out of his kindness has given us such wonderful explanatory purports that make things so clear to us as to how to apply these verses of Gita in our day-to-day lives. The translation reads, "One who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control, and fixes his consciousness upon me." Me, he says. For the first time he says, fix your consciousness on me. Mat paraha is known as a man of steady intelligence. So Krishna is defining to Arjun the man of steady intelligence, how he controls his senses fully. Is that by keeping your consciousness completely fixed on me. Now this is the first hint of Bhakti Yoga, of surrendering our faith unto Krishna. Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport that the highest conception of yoga, which is the perfection of yoga, is Krishna consciousness, which is clearly explained in this work by Krishna only. You see, Krishna in the second chapter only gives us the extract of Gita, the conclusion of Gita. So this is one of those verses where Krishna is very explicit about telling that if you fix your intelligence on me, everything else becomes easy. That's the perfect way to go about it. So the perfection of yoga is to fix our mind, our consciousness and our senses engaged in Krishna. Now, he says, Srila Prabhupada writes that unless one is Krishna conscious, it is not at all possible to control one's senses, and we see that history is replete with such examples. We studied one such example in the previous verse also, when we saw the Vishwamitra who was a jnani, and had been doing tapasya for thousands of years to control his senses. He had a fall down just when the ankle bells of Menaka tinkled, and once when Ramba also came, he became angry. So he could not control his senses even after so much tapasya. So who are we? See, we are ordinary human beings. Any kind of lures of attractions for Maya, for the sense objects, they're just going to take us away. They're going to carry us away very quickly, very easily. So unless we fix our mind, our consciousness in Krishna, we really can not control our senses fully, and that goes for every single person on earth, or not just on earth, in the entire universe. You see, any person who wants to keep away from the negative engagements has to indulge in the positive engagement of being Krishna conscious. Srila Prabhupada explains this further by quoting yet another example of Durvasa Muni. Who hasn't heard of Durvasa Muni? We all know him as the angry sadhu. We have heard stories, we've seen him in the serials, in the TV serials, as that sadhu becomes very quickly angry with anyone, the anger being just on the tip of his nose, the slightest excuse and he bursts. Well, one such incident took place when King Ambarish, in his capital, in his kingdom, King Ambarish was a wonderful king. His example is quoted in Srimad Bhagavatam. And once he had kept the Ekadashi Vrata, the austerity of keeping the Ekadashi fast on the 11th day of the lunar cycle. And on the next day, or that is the Dwadashi, he was about to, break his fast by drinking water and having food at the certain time. Now there is a muhurit for even opening the fast or breaking the fast for, say, Ekadashi or any other fast that we keep for certain purposes. So this particular muhurit is fixed by the astrological calculations. Now King Ambarish was about to break his fast in that muhurat when suddenly Durvasa Muni comes there along with so many of his disciples, and he says, "Wait, King Ambarish, I also have to break my Ekadashi fast, but wait until I come back from taking my bath with my disciples in the river." So King Ambarish says, "All right." He is a respectful king, a perfect Kshatriya. He respects and welcomes Durvasa Muni, and he readily agrees to wait for him to break the fast. Now Durvasa Muni goes to the river to take bath, but what happens is that he's taking longer than usual. Well, maybe he just wanted to test the king, but he doesn't come back on time within the muhurat to break the fast. Now the muhurat is passing by, and the ministers and the king's advisors are telling him, "Okay, Raja Ambarish, you please break the fast, otherwise you are going to get some kind of aparad, some kind of offense if you don't break the fast in this decided muhurat." No, King Ambarish says that I have promised King Durvasa Muni that I will not break the fast until he comes back. So ministers advise him to at least take water, because that will somehow break the fast also and not make the king liable to any offense. So King Ambarish agrees and says, "Okay, I'll have just one sip of water, to keep within the muhurat time." Now he starts to drink that one sip of water, and suddenly Durvasa Muni appears on the scene, just as maybe he was just waiting behind the door to see what king is going to do. So when he comes, and he immediately bursts into fits of anger, and he says, "I told you to wait for me, King Ambarish. Why didn't you do that? Now I will curse you." He takes some water out of his kamandalu, that pot that the sannyasis and the munis and the rishis keep with them, and he's about to throw a curse at him. And suddenly what happens is Krishna understands that his devotee King Ambarish is a really surrendered devotee to Krishna. So he understands that he is in trouble. So Krishna sends his Sudarshan Chakra after Durvasa Muni. Well, actually, I remember now that Durvasa Muni has probably, just thrown that water, the cursed water, and a personality has appeared from there to kill King Ambarish. But before that can happen, the Sudarshan Chakra arrives on the scene to cut the throat of Durvasa Muni. Now, Durvasa Muni is a sannyasi and he's a Brahmin, which means according to the Varnashram Dharam, he is higher than Ambarish Raja in the Varna also, which means Brahmin, Kshatriya, etc., and the ashram also, which means sannyas, brahmacharya, grihastha also. So he is higher, he has the highest Varna and the highest ashram. He is a Brahmin and a sannyasi. And King Ambarish is lower to him in being a Kshatriya and a grihastha. But in spite of that, since Ambarish Maharaj is a Matparah devotee. Matparah means completely surrendered to Krishna. A devotee completely surrendered to Krishna. So Krishna protects him by sending his Sudarshan Chakra. So what does Krishna care about the Varna and the ashram? If one is a completely surrendered devotee, he is humble. Now King Ambarish is so humble that he's actually tolerating all the angry fits of Durvasa Muni, because he's a devotee. He's so tolerant. But Krishna cannot tolerate any blasphemy conducted against his devotees, and he's there. Therefore sends the Sudarshan Chakra. Now Durvasa Muni starts running from here to there. He runs to Shiva, he runs to Brahma. Please protect me from this Sudarshan Chakra. And they advise him, go to the person who has that, who carries the Sudarshan Chakra. So he goes to Vishnu also, Krishna or Vishnu, I'm sorry. So Vishnu says that I will not forgive you until my devotee does. If you want forgiveness, go to my devotee, that is King Ambarish. If he forgives you, I will forgive you. So Durvasa Muni has to come back and he falls down at the feet of Ambarish, Maharaj Ambarish, and Maharaj Ambarish readily forgives him because he is such a wonderful devotee. A devotee can never be so cruel, so hard-hearted as not to, forgive the offenders. Now the Durvasa Muni is forgiven, but the lesson we derive from this whole episode is that a person who is completely surrendered to Krishna has his senses so much in control that he doesn't get angry, he doesn't get attracted by the lures of Maya, and that is what Srila Prabhupada is explaining to us through this. In fact, there is a shlok being quoted here by Srila Prabhupada from Srimad Bhagavatam. It's the Canto 9, the chapter number 4 and shloka number 18 to 20. There are 3 verses quoted here. Savai manah Krishna padaravindayor vachamsi vaikuntha gunanu varnane karau harer mandir marjana nadishu shrutim chakarushtyutta sat kathodaye, and so on. So these 3 verses tell us how Maharaj Ambarish was a surrendered devotee and how he kept his mind and senses completely engaged in Krishna consciousness. So if we have our mind and senses completely engaged in Krishna, then there is no chance of our senses or mind going astray and fooling us and betraying us by indulging in the wrong things. So the translation to these 3 verses tell us how King Ambarish kept his senses engaged. And how was that? King Ambarish fixed his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. His words, that means his tongue, in describing the abode of Krishna. Abode means Vaikuntha, the spiritual planets in which Krishna lives. So by describing the beautiful world of Krishna, he kept his words or his speech engaged. He kept his hands engaged in cleaning the temple of Krishna. His ears in hearing the glories or Krishna Katha, glories of Krishna. His eyes in seeing the beautiful form of Krishna. If you've ever been to a temple, maybe the local ISKCON temple, you'll find that the deity, the Vigraha of Krishna and Radharani, they're so beautiful that you can hardly take your eyes off them. So he used to keep his eyes always engaged in seeing the beautiful form of Krishna. And his body in touching the body of the devotees in affection. You see, when we go to the temple, we meet the devotees, we hug each other and we wish each other well. We say, Hare Krishna, how are you? So that is how our sense of touch can be kept beautifully engaged, positively engaged. Nostrils in smelling the sweet aroma, sweet fragrance of the flowers offered to Krishna at his lotus feet. And his tongue in tasting the tulsi leaves offered to Krishna. You see, when we continuously keep tasting the tulsi leaves offered to Krishna, we automatically start losing taste for any untoward things or things which can spoil our consciousness or things which can actually cause a fall down for us. So when our senses are positively engaged in Krishna, we see that they will forget about going here and there, pulling you this way, that way in the lures of Maya. Also, we can use our legs as King Ambarish used to for traveling to the holy places like Vrindavan, like Mathura, like Mayapur, Navadvip Dham, like Haridwar, like Badrinath, and such beautiful dhamas of the holy places that we have on earth here. We can use our legs to travel to them, where the temples of the Lord are situated. And we can dovetail our desires into the desires of Krishna, in fulfilling the desires of Krishna, and that is where the fulfillment of our desire takes place. Now, Srila Prabhupada explains to us that the word matpara is most significant, because if we become a matpara devotee like King Ambarish, there is no question, whichever situation we may be in, we may not be a big jnani, we may not be a tapasvi, wherever we are, maybe we are just a student, maybe we are just a householder, maybe just a housewife, whatever situation we are in, whichever profession we are following, if we are just devoted to Krishna's lotus feet, keeping our senses and mind engaged in the way we have just spoken about Maharaj Ambarish, there is no question of our senses leading us to the wrong path. And that's the ultimate strategy to keep away from entangling our senses in the snares of Maya, in the net of Maya, or this illusory world. In fact, Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan, who is a great scholar in the line of the Matpara devotees in our Guru Parampara, he says, Mad Bhakti Prabhavena Sarvendri Vijaya Purvika Swatma Drishti Sulabheti Bhavaha, which means the senses can only be completely controlled by the strength of devotional service to Krishna. There is no other way of controlling our senses. You think of an example, in historical evidences of people who are not surrendered to Krishna and have been able to control their senses. There is not a single example we can quote here. Such people most definitely will have a fall down. Only the devotees of Krishna have had the track record of keeping themselves into control and finally being able to break this snare of Maya and go back to the spiritual world. In the previous shloka, we discussed the example of Yamunacharya. In some other shlokas, we have discussed the example of a very great devotee called Haridas Thakur, who actually did not get lured by Maya Devi incarnate. Even Maya Devi came to lure him into the snare, just like Menaka came to Vishwamitra. But Vishwamitra fell down, but Haridas Thakur did not, because he was continuously chanting the names of Lord Krishna. That's the only way, and that's the conclusion of the Shastras. Just as a blazing fire burns everything within a room, Lord Vishnu, situated in the heart of the yogi, burns up all kinds of impurities, all kinds of impure desires. And that's the way Yoga Sutra also prescribes meditation on Vishnu. And that's the reason why, the people who meditate on a flame, for instance, or a dot or a spot of light, they're in for trouble, because there will come a time when they will have a fall down, because their engagement is not complete. When we meditate, even if you have to meditate, we have to meditate on the form of Vishnu, on the names of Hari, on the names of Krishna and Radharani. And that's the ultimate way to keep all our senses engaged beyond any doubt. And that's the aim of real yoga. That's the perfection of yoga. With that, we finished today's shloka. But how nice it will be if you all meditate on this fact, that we keep living our lives being attracted to this and attracted to that, our senses pulling us apart in all directions, and we have that feeling that really we are not in control of our lives. And what's the way? What's the way to get in control of our lives? That is what is being disclosed here in this shloka by Krishna. The only way to get in control of your life is to surrender yourself to me. Because when Krishna is in control of our senses and our mind, nothing can get out of control. Because anyway, Krishna is Rishikesh. He is the master of the senses. So if we submit the senses to the master of the senses, what can go wrong? Absolutely no way anything can go wrong in the life after that. So please do meditate upon this, and very soon in the next two shlokas, 62 and 63, Krishna is going to tell us What happens if we don't become a surrendered devotee? If we don't fix our mind on Krishna, what happens then? We'll see that in the next 2 shloka. Till then, please chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And relish the sweetness of the holy names. Relish the bliss of their holy names in your life.